Hi, I've just uploaded one across a lake, looking across a lake. I'll do some sort of version of it in as a line and wash. So I'll just start by just making a bit of a grassy marsh grass type of a bank in sand dunes, or sandy dunes. Just bit of interest, very lightly hold the brush. You can use a stick, which I was using originally, but I seem to prefer this. I got fed up with putting the stick in the ink. And I'll put a few rocks in here, the grass, more grass, come across here, showing a sort of an inlet. Some grasses coming up here. Just want to make the foreshore interesting rather than just a bit of dune. But I'm enjoying doing rocks at the moment, as you know. I don't do portraits of animals, it's a skill I have never learned. I've never ever wanted to do it. My interest has always been landscape, the atmosphere in the skies, trying to create movement. Perhaps I set my sights too low, but I didn't have any great ability when I was at school, or say interest in doing all this. That came in my 20s mostly, and there was a sort of an explosion of leisure painting with demonstrators, like British demonstrators like Roland Hilder, then Ron Ranson 30 odd years ago. All lovely stuff and all to be done. But I just like doing this. And it's been hard enough learning to do all this over the years. Trying to do trees, canopies, making it look spontaneous. It's always a challenge though. Put that coming up here. I want to make the right hand bank different than the right hand bank, otherwise I'm just repeating myself on like a mirror image, and that's just monotonous. So just come across here. We can maybe put in a boat here, just moored. I only show boats as a bit of interest in the landscape, and that will be just beached. Nothing great. You can have a bit of mooring post stick. I can put reflections in there. Just a few. Right, okay, that'll do for that. We'll have a horizon again. Let's go uphill a bit. that's a bit better. And we'll put in some hills, lower hills this time, going out to sea. That'll do, I think. Figure, do we want to figure? See, this boat is quite small compared to this bank here, so I better make this bit here quite large-ish to put that into scale. It's a very small boat, isn't it? Right, okay, we'll let that go. I'll clean my brush. You always must make sure you clean your brush when you're using acrylic or waterproof paints, inks, because otherwise what happens is it all gets caught in this bit here and then your brush hairs start to split. So I usually put it in my mouth at the end, bring it back to a point and carefully put it down. They are our tools after all. Right, now there's my ink. I just used a little bit of a lid. I'll just dry that, so take your headphones off. Oops, sorry, the wire's twisted. Right, okay. I'll wet the paper. Now here are my colours: lemon yellow, raw sienna, alizarin, light red, ultramarine, burnt umber, Payne's grey, which I'm trying to keep away from, and this burnt sienna. And I've got a bit of that ink splashing all over there. So you need plenty of rag to wipe the brush on, because these hakes, and I presume you're using hakes. This whole method is about using this 2-inch brush, this 2-inch Ron Ransom hake. They're fabulous brushes when they behave, but they're ferociously difficult to get used to because of the amount of water they hold and their habit of splitting and not coming back together to a sharp chisel edge. But if you watched all the videos, my methods will become clear. It's a Ron Ransom technique I'm using. And with the exception that these paints are dry rather than straight out of the tube, but you can use straight out of the tube if you wish. But you'll really need to use a bigger tray because of the amount of water that's flopping around. Right, now first off, just wet the paper. It's a wet in wet technique, which is what I always do. You get used to certain things like papers and paints. The paints are Cotsman watercolours by Winsor & Newton, and they're very easy to get hold of online. They're 21ml tubes, that big. There's my hand, so they'll give you some idea of how big those tubes are, longer than my fingers. And there's a lot of paint, and because of that, and it's relatively inexpensive, you don't mind using a lot of it. Squirt it out and use it. If you're always scrabbling around trying to get some paint on your brush, you're wasting your time. From my experience anyway, but we all paint differently. Now, excuse me, I'll put in some nice warm raw sienna all over. Need some in here. Let's change the light a bit. Let's have some fun with the light. Let's use a bit of blue and light red. and just keep the light in the middle and paint in your watercolour. That's where the water's coming into the lake or across the sea, but this is still water, and that would be more reflective than wind-blown water out to sea. So let us just bring that bit of symmetry across there. See what happens. Now I'm going to put in a bit of a darker tone on one side of that anyway. Just now, because that has now grown, I'm going to reclip the paper. So you don't have to shrink or stretch your paper, just reclip it as it expands and it will stay very flat. And I'm using Fabriano, £130 weight from Grantham's. A very good paper for this sort of work, inexpensive, comes in blocks of 100, which is a great way to buy it, so you get a lot for your money. And if you're a beginner, you're going to use a lot of watercolour paper, because this does take quite a bit of getting used to, this style of painting. Now that's got a bit hard edge there, but never mind. I'll put in my distant hills. I'll think of that now. Same colour as you're putting in the sky. So just go into nothing there. And a bit of sienna. Clean your brush. Put some of this across here. I'll just bring that down into there. And into that, I'll clean that off afterwards. Well, in fact, I'll do that now. So I'll just use a bit of tissue. Always have some tissue standing by. Alright, there we are. Have a swig of tea. Now that's gone into some interesting shapes and it's drawing with a hard edge. But it's an interesting effect. So I'm all up for an interesting effect. I'll give that a bit of a dry now. Take your headphones off. There's not a lot I can do about that. It's just a risk we take with these cheaper papers. Maybe it wasn't the paper wasn't as wet as it should have been to start with, but it doesn't matter. Now a bit of burnt umber, very very weak. Bit of yellow raw sienna, very weak, and then just. This is the sand. I will put a bit of rock in it. as well. And this is a bit darker here because it's a bit more shadow of those trees or stunted things. Let's lighten that a bit. Right, get that in there like that. Now we can develop a bit of shadow in here, a bit of warm. Bit of red and blue, that's all I'm using on that, just to make it a bit of interest. A bit more blue, a bit of burnt umber. Bit of more shadow in there. And a bit of green, I think. A bit of yellow in with the blue. So the wind, although they should be going that way, shouldn't they? Never mind. I'll put a bit of rocky stuff on here, just some pebbly, plenty of dark. Anchor the foreground a little bit. Okay, all I'm trying to do here is just creating some interest in the foreground. So we just some little rocks, little bits and pieces. Be a bit creative with your shape, your rock shapes. Don't overdo them like I do. Just have some fun with them. They're just bits of interest in this landscape. Or see waterscape. A swig of tea. So as this goes in, the colours, the thickness of the colours or the intensity of the colours tend to throw the ink back into the landscape. It's a very interesting technique. I'm just going to dry that off. Hold your ears. You can tell I'm right-handed because I'm doing everything sort of that way. Right. Okay. Some nice grasses. I'm going to put a bit of yellow in with the blue. Just some heavier detail in here. And when you put in these, because it's quite a bit of water, put some bits of grass going up and then show reflections of same. Put in a bit of a, let's have something like that, and just some grey. Something just old bits of wood used as a anchor for boats and from a bygone age. Just put a bit of reflection or shadow. shadow. Oops. Okay. Now the boat, so we have a whatever blue boat. Alright, okay. And a nice bit of dark under here for the shadow. If the plimsoll line on these things, no, wouldn't have thought so. So we just bit of shadow under here. Alright, I'll put in the top of that boat to come by and some. Well, I'll give it a bit of a try. Hold on. I was sort of guessing this. I live as far away from the sea as you can imagine, so wow. It was better before I mucked about, didn't there? Right, well that'll do. I'll just put some reflection in that. Clean brush, bit of dry brush as well. Alright, okay, so we've got some broken water on here. So we'll show something like that, and we'll put in a bit more dry brush on here. Your paper's got to be really flat for this, so be careful. Now we'll put in a bit of a reflection of that bank in there, here. And we're going a bit of harder. Right, okay, let's put on some little yachts on the horizon, but I'm not going to etch out for this. I'm not etched to lift out by wetting the paper. I'm going to put in some blue, darker blue. No reflections because they're just a bit too far away. We'll have a ready sail, otherwise they won't show up. Now, so something I do occasionally is to use a little bit of gouache. Now this is age old and almost dry, So but I'm too mean to change it because it lasts so long. I only use it just for some flicks. Oh, and flourishes. So I'll put in some where it shows. There we go. Just all adds a bit of interest. Let's put a white one there. There we are. Put a bloke in. If I put the bloke in here, the size of that boat there, not we'll buy it. So I can just sort of dob him in here. Got to make sure he's in scale. This is always a bit of a problem. Make sure that your figure reflects the relative size, because he gives scale to everything else. So really he's a bit too small for that tree, but then he's the same size over here, so that could be quite, yeah, it wouldn't be so bad. So let's just put in some of that. I'll make him a little bit bigger. It's a small boat, isn't it? Give him a bit more. Okay, he'll do. I'll put someone over the other side as well, in a bit of shadow here. Just a little head. Don't make your head too big. Oh, someone just up there. I'll put a couple of birds. And a signature. It's a Monday, so we're not up to speed yet. So didn't paint over the weekend. It was my wife's birthday. We had a big party, massive party on Saturday, and I didn't have time to paint on Saturday. In my signature, it doesn't look as if it's going to show, does it? Okay, I'll put that in a mouth and have a look, see what this looks like. But these sort of things, you should learn to do second nature, really. That's not very good, but hey, I'm not going to worry about it. These things happen. Sometimes they look good, sometimes they don't. So there we are. We've got another across the estuary. Another naff title. The boat's not too bad. No reflections on the water. So I need to practice boats, don't I? Let's have a little zoom in and have a look and see what we've actually done here. Right. Oops. So there's my figure. There's my little boat. But I think the boat is slightly out of scale, probably. But anyway, I'll move the camera around a bit, so that you can see straight on. I'll just zoom out and leave you with that for a few seconds. So have a go at it yourself, something like that anyway. You don't have to copy, well you can copy, but do your own thing make up your own views, base them on other ideas you have or other reference material, collect reference material, build up a library of it so you can always refer to it. I think I should have been, well, it's a line and wash, it's an ink work painted over, so it's not as, perhaps as warming in tone as I'd have liked, but there we are. It'll look good on YouTube. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.